Welcome everyone to the 2024, February 2024 Knowledge Share. Just brief agenda, welcome, that part's over. Cover just a little bit about the upcoming event this summer. Talk about the Alternate Device Committee. We need a better name. The APRS Foundation, now that it's official. And then our presenter of the month, Roger, who's going to be presenting. He's got quite the presentation for you guys. It's pretty incredible. A little bit of news about the website, and then any Q&As and closing. So without further ado, I knew that the date of the event was just going to keep coming up quicker and quicker. So I was looking at a slide deck from a few, I guess, a couple of months ago, and it was like, over 200 days. Number just keeps going down and down. It'll be below 100 days here before we know it. I wanted to work with you guys on finalizing the list of sites. I mean, I think for the most part, we stick with what we did last year, but there was recent interest in Lookout Mountain, which we've been wanting to add that off and on for the past few years. And if we've got somebody who wants to activate it, I say I'm in favor of it unless anybody else is opposed to it. We can just discuss that on the list. We don't necessarily need to hash it out right now. And then I know that you were looking at Ron, you're looking at alternative sites for GD Hill, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, it's a little bit farther north. It doesn't look at all like it really impacts anything going north. It's actually a better site. Maybe minor degradation coming from Maryland, but it's a drive up and literally on the trail.
okay.
But I just see, I mean, you can use GD Hill, but it's uh, the access to it, and it's nothing that'll ever be a permanent site. Because there's no way in the world somebody's going to let you put at least I don't expect anybody to let you put an antenna and
Oh
solar
yeah.
cells or something up there. But for proof of concept, it's great. But so I was looking at some of the other places after talking with some people from the area, and I sent you those rudimentary plots that I can do on radio mobile.
Hmm.
But hopefully, I'd like to do some testing with it if we can before the event.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, anything we can do to prove it out would be great. And then I started working on it the other day. I haven't finished it yet, but definitely for once we get a complete list of everybody who's going to be involved in the event this year, I'm going to be sending out the inventory sheet this year because we did not do it last year. Um, but yeah, I guess for anybody who's on the call who is not familiar with the event, so every third Saturday of every July since, oh my gosh, 2012, 2013. We have stations lined up along mountaintops the length of the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine, and even had a few years where we had folks participate from Canada. For those that didn't know that the trail went into Canada, it does. Um, and we use APRS to exchange messages in real time, and it's pretty incredible events. What keeps us coming back year after year is the challenge, getting out in the field, operating remotely, and I say the challenge of it. I mean, we've had years where we've been successful. We've had years where we haven't. We started experimenting a couple of years ago. It's historically been a Kenwood only event, but we started introducing what we refer to as the APRS appliance. Because Kenwood, we're just kind of, the jury was out as to whether or not they were going to stay in the business. So we wanted to look at alternative devices, but also open up opportunity for more people to be part of the event that may not, Kenwoods are expensive, so they may not be able to invest in equipment at that price point. So, and we're gonna do that again this year, which actually goes nicely into this slide here. And John, I'm not necessarily putting you on the spot, but I know we just talked about it yesterday. Is that this year, and it's not going to be a long drawn out process or anything like that, but I think we want to have some form of a device committee. Did you want to talk about that at all, John? No? You on mute? All right. well, anyway, so I wanted John to select a few folks to look at what options are out there and help us make a decision for the group. Something that's easily sourceable and not super expensive, ideally based on hardware that we've tested, but also factors in feedback that we've received from participants over the past couple of years about some changes that they would like to see that would increase usability. So John Tarbox will be heading up that effort, and I think he reached out to Lynn about it, and hopefully be hearing more about that in the next few days. The APRS Foundation, so 2 years in the making, it is official. I hit send after Lynn helped me come up with a shorter version of the War and Peace document that I wrote. Lynn helped me trim that down, and we made ourselves official to APRS SIG and the APRS group on groups.io. For those that are unaware, so the leadership team is myself as president, John Tarbox, WA1KLI, not the WB1. Goodness. Vice President John Liner, WB2OSZ, is our secretary. Lynn, KJ4ERJ, treasurer, and Jason, K4APR, is our chief operations officer. We're really just getting started, but there seems to be a flurry of very positive activity. It's been well received. Even got a donation the same night that we announced that the foundation is real. So I think you'll be seeing a lot more activity from us. Ideally, it's really to kind of get momentum started, but really for the ham community to help solidify where APRS is and where we want it to go. There are a number of different ways of getting involved. I don't want to burn up too much time on this call, though we can talk about it towards the end. I want to leave plenty of time for our presenter, but just wanted to let you guys know that it is official. So no more hush hush. You can talk about the foundation at this point. On to our guest speaker. So Roger, N1XP, agreed to speak with us tonight. Roger's from East Waterboro, Maine. Ham since 1962. Pretty incredible. Electrical engineer by trade, and 42 years in the telecom industry. Was director of engineering at National Cable Telecommunications Association, or NCTA, and has been the CTO of a pretty wide variety of organizations. Has put together, I'd say probably maybe the most, or definitely top 2 or 3 most technical, but also comprehensive slides presentations that we've had. So I hope you guys get a lot out of it. I think it's going to be a really great presentation. So Roger, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you. You should be able to take over and do your thing.
There we go. Okay.
There you are.
John Tarbox first approached me about providing a presentation to the group on using radio mobile software for calculating path loss and viability of different sites along the trail. And I resurrected an old program I had where I explained how to calculate path loss and path topology and so forth. And I got halfway through it, reviewing it, and I said, no, this isn't what you guys really want. You want to know about the software you're using, and probably comments, and John asked for comments about other software programs available to you. I do want to start. Let's see if I can do this now. Be on the right screen. I've got multiple screens here. Here we go. Okay, does everybody see that?
can still see you right now, but there may be a little bit of a delay, so.
Okay. Oh, I didn't share, that's why.
Ah,
It helps to share.
that will do it.
Desktop to share.
There we go. Now it's coming up.
Okay, now we'll do the. There we go.
Looking good.
So any radio path, whether it be VHF, UHF, and microwave, these are some of the things that you must consider when you're calculating the path. That's the free space path loss, transmission gain, receiver loss, distance and azimuth, path clearances, that's over terrain, some value of earth curvature. And I want to mention that some programs do not include earth curvature or earth bulge in their calculations. Commercial and military operators experience in radio path engineering develop 5 critical principles, and that's optimized spacing. That's optimized either for path loss or terrain clearance, even reflections off of bodies of water or smooth fields. You don't have that problem along the trail that I'm aware of. Proper antenna gain, path topology, adequate path clearance, adequate fade margin. And this is key to your reliability. And all 5 have subparts to the final reliability probabilities and analysis. The first step in any path analysis is determining is the path viable. And you select the site, determine the geocoordinates, you must know the distance, either from calculation or software. The software does all this for you, so it's much easier than it used to be when I started doing it. And then you calculate free space loss. And if you don't have adequate margins at the receive site, then all bets are off. You need to select another site before you go on. This is a classic freeze calculation for free space attenuation. It's only valid in the far field region beyond 22 wavelengths, which is not a problem for you. It's based on the inverse square law of distance, simplified by using classic modified Friss transmission formula that you see here. I won't go into it in detail unless somebody wants to later. But in path loss and margin, we must consider the transmit power, transmit loss, antenna gain, the free space path attenuation, receive antenna gain, receive loss, and then the receive threshold. And I'll get into receive threshold in a little bit later, because you must allow for signal to noise and for interference. Interference is a big one. These are some of the factors that go into free space attenuation. That's path margin, path clearances, K factor, which is done for refraction, earth bulge, Fresnel zone clearance, tree height, other obstructions, buildings. There are other factors too, which go into it. And the result is really path reliability. Here's the earth curvature factor. Now, everyone, I think, who does this sort of work, path analysis, knows that 1.34 or 4/3 earth curvature is the standard atmosphere. Well, standard atmosphere doesn't exist, gentlemen. I don't think, do we have ladies? But calculate first at standard atmosphere, and then you should calculate at least at 2 others. They're down as low as 0.5 for humidity inversion, which will be a factor across some valleys in the trail. Um, and that leads to a subfractive, meaning that it curves upward instead of downward towards the earth. And then southern coastal areas during the summer, because summers in the valley, I can tell you, are horrendous with humidity and temperature inversions. Software does yeoman's job in providing the path clearance analysis, topography, but it may miss some important obstructions if the interval is too wide. Now, I understand that that Radio Mobile does a very good job of this at 1 meter apart, so there's not a problem. It's variable in some other programs. Some of the commercial programs, it's very variable down to 3/10 of a meter. Earth bulge, again, Earth is not flat, you know that. And you need to calculate several different K values for reliability. For zone clearance, Fresnel zone is defined, for those who don't know, as a grouping of points representing a path of 1/2 leg length or longer than a straight line between the receiver and the transmitter. And the first Fresnel zone ideally should be 80% clear of obstacles. And I know in practice, everyone uses 6/10, 60% as acceptable. Depends on the reliability we want. Here's the typical path. This is a grazing path. It shows the 6/10 Fresnel zone block. This is probably not a viable path over any distance. The graph shows 16 kilometers. That's a very short distance. Probably throw the handheld at person and they could receive it. But longer paths, much longer paths, you have a problem with this kind of clearance. Atmospheric variations are key in calculating the path reliability. You have to consider refractive index, which I've copied here out of the International Telecommunications Union recommendations, and it's referenced here. I have a whole page of references at the end. Let's see. Atmospheric variation losses, you can calculate the loss directly from the refractive index by this formula. And again, it's provided by the ITU recommendations. Reflections, I won't get into reflections other than say that across some long paths out west, the Midwest, across smooth grain fields, if they become morning humidity, you'll find reflections off of that, or you'll find it off of lakes or long stretches of river if you are over top, the path is over top the river. But this is how it's calculated. I know a lot of people don't care about how a car is made or the physics behind it. They just want to drive it. So we'll get into the software. And I want to note that the software analysis is only as good as the data input. Now remember, the problem exists between the keyboard and the chair. Massage the data enough that it will say anything you desire. So you have to be careful with the input of the data, and we'll get into that in the Radio Mobile here in a minute. Just the background on Radio Mobile. It's a model of radio propagation frequencies, 20 megahertz to 20 gigahertz. That's quite a wide range because some of the factors that is used in there are fixed. And to be really true to engineering form, they shouldn't be fixed. You should be able to vary them. It's based upon original work by Longley and Rice in the 60s. from the National Institute of Telecommunications, the National Telecommunications Institute, funded by the, at that time, National Bureau of Standards, now NIST. It uses the, of course, they all do electromagnetic theory by Maxwell, statistical analysis of terrain features and signal attenuation. Mapping is based on the shuttle radar topography mission, which is old. And you'll see one of the newer online free software programs uses a much better technique. Excuse me, predicts median attenuation as a function of distance and the variability of signal in time and space. And this is based on an NTIA report in 1982. All right, here we are with radio mobile. Excuse me. We have the same path. It's a short path. But the results are totally different. If we notice, let's see if I can do this. Oh yeah, here we go. The receive level in this case on the left is 1.24 microvolts. I assume that's per meter. Or is that absolute? That's absolute. The one on the right is 267.24 microvolts. Why the difference between the two? Well, it's all what you input to the program. And we'll cover that in a minute. This is a very nice display of different parameters. You'll notice here the free space path loss is a little bit different because parameters inputted are different. We'll cover that in a second. Obstructive path loss, there is none over here. Urban, none. Forest, on the left, none on the right. Statistical, none. Again, all because of data input. The power from the transmitter was the same. Antenna gain was the same on both sides. So this is all due to atmospheric and refraction problems. If you look at the view, excuse me, I have problems here. The variation of terrain in this short path, see there it is 207 meters, which is quite a bit for a short path. Propagation mode is line of sight, but the minimum clearance is 3/10 of a Fresnel zone. And that tells you where it's happening, which is quite helpful. Frequency, free space, path loss, obstruction, urban, forest, and statistics. Total propagation loss 154. I think this, I copied a different detail from the panel that I showed before. Let's see if I can. I don't know how to go back now. Okay.
What are you trying to do?
I was just trying to go back a slide, but that's all right.
Okay.
So the worst reception, you only have a dB margin, or 2.74 is the earlier slide showed. Here's the key: 99.99% of situations, or 99.99% reliability on this path. So it's a good path. It's just that if anything worse happens, you'll have a dB left of margin. This path really has very little obstruction, forest, or statistical. Why? Because we use different statistical criteria. And I'll show that how to do that in a minute. So these factors are key. And where you change all of that is in the parameters of the network properties. You can see that down here I have 99.99%. Okay. Ground conductivity. This is key. The default that's used in radio mobile is 5 millisiemens. The ground conductivity loss in this particular area is only 2 millisiemens. So there's quite a bit of difference here. And the ground permittivity is lockstep even with ground conductivity, but you must find the charts, and they're published by the FCC for the US anyway. And the ground permittivity in this case is 9, not 15 as the default. So those two default parameters can be misleading. Most of the time, I looked briefly, and most of the Appalachian Trail is either 2, or there are some spots that are 4. So you have to be careful which path you're conducting the calculation on, and what units you use here. We talked about variability or reliability. Down here on the bottom is where you add either city or forest loss. Most of it's forest loss. If you have a grazing path, this number is going to be much, much higher. Most of the trail, I would think you'd want to use about 75%. So again, these are the keys right here. Now, K factor. K factor, standard atmosphere is 4/3 or 1.33. The continental temperate gives that factor number. I suggest that several calculations be made. One using continental subtropical, it's summertime, very humid, late August. And lower part of the trail is going to be extremely difficult climate factor. Wintertime, you can use continental temperate, which is the standard, or maritime temperate over land, which will give you more bending factor. Other considerations, and this is something that most people are not aware of if they haven't practiced in the radio industry, in the telecommunications industry, is that modern receivers have extremely wide RF bandpass front ends. I looked at the Kenwood 710. I think it's almost 470 megahertz wide, which allows a vast number of signals to be let through to the mixer. Now, I understand that the third order intercept is very high, as it should be on that receiver, but it isn't high enough in areas where situations where you have extreme RF environment, mountaintops with lots of commercial traffic on it. Multiple out-of-band signals will block the receiver quite heavily. My recommendation is in the receiver threshold box, which use 1 microvolt or higher as the receiver threshold, not the published maximum available from the manufacturer. I think in this case, the 0.5 microvolts, if that's true. Your line losses, be sure you include all the cavities, circulators, and so forth, as well as the line loss. Some people forget that. And my recommendation is when you add all the losses of the circulators, panels, and cables, is to use the transmit power measurement. Actually measure the power out of all of that mess, if you will, conglomeration of filters and so forth, the actual input to the transmission line. Sometimes it's helpful to forget the transmission line altogether and all of it, and measure the transmit power at the antenna if it's available, and use that for your transmit power and put 0 in for the line loss. And that's the truer way of calculating this. Another consideration in this particular case with APRS is that AX.25 networks you should expect about 2/3 the range of a normal voice path, and that's a minus 1.8 dB, and that should be added in with the line losses because there's no other place to put it. I recommend you use the voice net selection in the topology dialog box and add the losses elsewhere, as I said. Do not use the data net selection because it adds modulation enhancement factors available for M-area and quad area modulation schemes that's not available to the standard FM enhancement factor. So the real recommendation for this is perform multiple sets of calculations, use correct additional losses, conductivity and permittivity, percentage of variability, K factor, and compare the results of those multiple calculations. And if any one of them fails, you better start looking for the problem, because you won't have a reliable path. Their old rule of thumb, and this is standard FM voice technology, is that a long path should have 40 dB margin or better. And I know that's tough to achieve in your situations, but that's old Bell Telephone, when they used to have a VHF network across the US, east to west. Let's see, let's go to, here are the references if anybody's interested, where I dug up some of this information over time. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to take them, but I want to make one more comment that I have not used other open software programs, so I really am not an expert on commenting on them. And SCADA Core is one such freely available program, but it's for very short paths. It does not consider earth bulge. It does not consider refractivity and other factors. So I would stay away from that one. We had one path here in Maine on the main emergency packet network. Was calculated using SCADA Core, and oh, it was a clear path. No, it wasn't, because there was no earth bulge, no topography added in, no obstructions. John asked me to comment about Ubiquity. Ubiquity is a software used by the mesh folks. And as far as I can tell, and this is just a cursory look, is that Ubiquity software only deals with their equipment, and there are no changeable factors other than path distance. Now, they do have a fairly complete mapping system with all the data points. But I am reluctant, hesitant, maybe because I'm old, is to not use a software program that doesn't allow you to change factors. I'm sure that can get you into a lot of trouble. I'm sure Ubiquity has put this program out because it is good for their equipment. They wouldn't put out something that would allow a user, purchaser of their equipment to have bad past. So I'm sure it's a fine program. It's just not something that you can use at VHF or with anybody else's equipment because it doesn't allow you to change your antenna, speed line, etc. As you know, the ubiquity mesh equipment is integrated. The transmitter is right at the antenna. Cloud RF. Again, I looked very quickly at that, and it seems to be a superior program. It is online only, but the mapping is superior to anything else I've seen, even in some commercial software. So those are your choices, gentlemen. It's RF mobile or cloud RF. I think that concludes it. Questions, anyone? Let's see, I'm gonna close this.
Does anybody have any questions for Roger?
I know that was quick and sweet, but no, okay.
Right. Going once, going twice.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Roger. It was great.
Okay.
Appreciate your time and yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Roger. And is this deck going to be made available?
I think it already is, isn't it?
I can make it available. I didn't know if you wanted it shared, so.
Let me send you the latest.
Okay.
In PowerPoint. Because I think I added some notes and so forth.
Yeah, send me the latest one and then I can share it with the group.
Sure, be happy to, of course.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, guys, let me take back over here. I really only had one other thing to go over with you guys, and that was just that we do, where is it here? Ah, okay. Yeah, so we actually have a webmaster for helping out with the Golden Packet websites. There's two. There's the main site, natgoldenpacket.org, or actually, yeah, is it not? I'm doing too many things at once, if you guys can't tell. .net, and then there's atgp.wiki, which is the one I spent most of my time on. John Barr, who's actually one of John Tarbox's students, has agreed to take over and help us with maintaining the sites. The at goldenpacket.net site has been on a platform called Weebly, which I picked just because years ago I'd used it for building sites because it's like real simple. If you can type and drag and drop, you can build a website, but there's a lot of restrictions in terms of what you can accomplish with it. And it's just not the greatest platform in the world. So finally going to get off of that. The wiki will look and feel all will be the same, but we're switching from a static content generator called Sphinx over to a new one called MK Docs. Found it's a lot easier to work with. And then one of the things that I've been wanting to do is come up with like more of like a standardized template for all the different sites. I think it was Comer's Rock. No, sorry. Yeah, this is the one that I kind of like the most, where it starts off with just like a heading, location, an overview, has some facts, and then really a lot of this content came over from the original aprs.org site. So I wanted to boilerplate this and then kind of have this be the basis for any of the data that goes onto this wiki going forward. There are links up here for each year's event, but right now they're really just placeholders. We desperately needed a webmaster to give this the time that it really needs. But you know, if anybody wants to see any sort of ads, moves, or changes made to the site, if you have any ideas, any suggestions, by all means, let us know, and then we can bring them to John's attention, and he's getting to a point now where he's going to be ready to start digging into this probably in the next couple of weeks. And that's pretty much all I wanted to go over with you guys tonight. Nothing too formal. Anybody else have anything they want to cover?
Jeff, a question.
Sure.
What is the Alternative Devices Committee? What's that all about?
So yeah, I think the idea is so Don had developed the APRS appliance that we used in the past. Jason has also or is working on some hardware. We didn't want to just like pick something without getting input from others in the group like we had done pretty much in the past. And we didn't, and the general idea was to not have somebody who's developing it be the one that selects it. Have like some more impartial folks that are more operating along the lines of what does the group need, as opposed to having like a I'm trying to think what the right word is, but you know, it's not, they're not picking their own solution, right? They're impartial in picking something that is just going to work best based on group's needs and the feedback that we've received. So John Tarbox was going to pick a group of like 2 or 3 people to help us with ironing out the requirements and then going out and determining what options are available, and then coming back to the group and going through selection criteria, down select until we find something that we want to use.
You say select, Jeff. What are we
Well, because we've
selecting
used
for?
yeah, so we use Kenwood, right? And then there's the non-Kenwood solution. So this is going to be, what is the non-Kenwood solution going to be that we use this year? Are we going to just reuse what we used in the past, or are we going to use something different?
And you would advocate for maybe not
I'm
experimentation. In other words, I might come up with.
Yeah, I like what Don has built, but the lack of having any sort of interface in it was the top complaint from myself as well as from several other people. So I don't want us to necessarily just reuse what we have been, because the same feedback came back both years after both events. Right. So plus there's other options that are out there.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything?
How are you feeling, Jeff?
How's
your arm?
Doing okay up until a little while ago, and then it just felt like somebody stabbed me in the arm. So I get, I mean, I'm out of the hard cast, so I'm just in like a compression bandage now. But every once in a while, I just get like a real sharp pain. Outside of that, I'm doing okay.
Hop back in the vehicle yet?
What's that?
Did you hop back in the vehicle yet? Or did you get into
No.
one? No.
No. I'm not sure when I'm going to be ready to do that. Not feeling it right now.
Yep, no rush.
Yeah.
So Jeff, you'd raised the issue earlier about whether to do 9600 baud only or 96 and 1200 baud. Is that being reviewed and thought through?
It hasn't been decided upon, so if any thoughts on the matter, we're happy to entertain it. Whatever you guys want to do. What do you think?
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say 9600 worked for us in the northern part.
So my take on that, in again, this is just my personal opinion, is that 1200 is a little more forgiving, and I think that if we're talking about looking at alternate hardware, I think once we decide on that, we really need to do a proof of concept one, choose a year to do 1200 and 9600 just to prove that the hardware is capable. And then maybe at that point move to an all 9600 option. I just, from my experience, I just know 1200 is a little more forgiving. And if we're going to a test bed kind of situation like we've done in the past year or so, I kind of like to see that new hardware, whatever it is, proven at 1200, and then maybe then we, 1200 and 9600.
Yeah, I mean, for Kenwood, we can just go straight 9600, right? Because that we know. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, and 9600. The other thing that I think a lot of people who haven't messed with it before don't understand is that 9600 is, again, 1200 is forgiving. I can hook a 1200 baud TNC to just about any radio and kind of just 12 o'clock the audio level, and a lot of times it works. 9600 doesn't work like that. So we've got to have our ducks in a row when it comes to proper audio adjustment and everything for it to work properly. So that's just I just think that if we dive headfirst into a 9600 non-Kenwood solution, I think we're going to be very frustrated with problems in the field. And that's just my personal opinion on it. Well, that's pretty much all I have to say about it, but that would be my suggestion, is that we do both first and then we can migrate to an all 9600 thing. But again, just my opinion on it.
I'll weigh in and second that opinion. 9600 outside of the designed in Kenwoods and Yaesus that just do it internally is really tricky to interface to an external radio. Yeah, there are radios that have good known mini DIN, for instance, on the back end of, but even that has not proven to be as plug and play, or as Jason said, as forgiving as the 1200 baud interfaces.
seems reasonable to me. I don't know, who was it that had asked about this in the first place? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Oh, I asked about it, but you'd raised it first, Jeff, a couple of meetings ago.
Yeah.
And it matters to me because from my perspective, whether to do 1200 and 9600 or 9600 only impacts the testing and logistics that I put together for my equipment. So getting that answer sooner rather than later is helpful. Quite honestly, my experience has been that everything that my intended approach has to be locked down by next month, because then I do the extensive testing and debugging to make sure everything works as expected.
I got a question for Don.
Go ahead.
Don, are you making a new Pi image for 2024, or we just continue with our old ones?
Well, the old ones will clearly work. My intent is to make a new Pi image based on the new OS. There are some amusements that occurred when I made that attempt back a few months ago. And I've been very busy on another project, but my expectation is I'll have the old images, and those we know work, and I will also try to have a new image based on the new OS. And you'll have your choice of either, because I'm not going to take down the old ones.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks.
Hi, this is John. Could I chime in for a minute here? Jeff had asked me as a matter of logistics to try to get a committee together, and the idea of the committee is the people that have some technical knowledge who want to participate to define what it is we want to take up on the mountains. And obviously we don't want to specify a solution. Everybody has to spend $10,000 to go buy something special. That's not going to happen. And by the same token, we want to make sure it's something that's going to work and meet our needs. And if you remember under Bob, it was simple. You showed up with a Kenwood or you didn't show up. He didn't want any mixed things on the trail. He didn't want any Yaesu radios there. You've showed up if you're 710 or you're D74. So what I want to do is two things. Anybody that's interested in being on the committee, and we'll have a separate committee meetings. Please email me and indicate your expression of interest to be on the committee. And the idea is it'll be an open committee. We want to listen to everybody's ideas. So you don't have to be on the committee to express your ideas, but we do need a committee that's going to, at this point, get together and say, what do we want to do? Do we want to make sure everybody has the identical thing, or were there going to be a couple of different options? And, for instance, like I'm hearing everybody saying here, we want 1200 and 9600 baud. So I assume that the committee I don't want to prejudge the committee, but we're going to say that what you bring to the mountain has to be capable of doing both 12 and 9600 and specifying those things. And it may be that we say, you have a choice of two different things. We may want to say, we have a particular device we want everybody to use, but I don't want to prejudge that. But I do want to encourage, if you're interested in being in the committee, please email me and we'll put together a technical committee to put together to make the recommendation to the group as a whole of what we think should be brought to the mountains. Any questions on that?
Yeah. Now, did I understand that Jeff was saying that if someone like myself is actively developing hardware, that we would not be on the committee as to not kind of taint the decision, that we would just present what we're suggesting and let the committee make that decision? Did I understand that correctly?
Well, clearly we don't want the decision dominated by one person that says, I'm making this great thing, it sells for $500. I want everybody to buy my solution.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with that.
I have no problem with somebody being on the committee who has a solution, but I would think, when the vote comes down, maybe they recuse themselves or don't vote for their own solution.
Absolutely. I think that's fair. I'll just say that I think everyone here knows that I do run a business doing this stuff. So I would agree with that 100%. That I'm not gonna just join to be a salesman. I want to see the best solution as well. I just know that I can offer a decent solution. Whether it's something that the group decides they want to do or not. And part of my goal has been to get the costs down, so it is a reasonably cost thing. When you're looking at a $600 radio versus a device we can build for, $150 and connect to any radio, that's kind of my goal. But anyways, that can be discussed later. I just wanted to clarify that, to understand what your intentions were there. So I know whether I don't want to use the word welcomed, because it sounds like, it sounds bad if you say you're not welcome to the committee.
Of course you are.
I understand if I was told, hey, Jason, you need to just take a back seat and just, submit what you want, but you can't be part of the discussion. I'd understand that.
No, I don't have a problem with that, Jason. If we look at this, for instance, John Langer's done Direwolf, right? So if we said we're going to exclude anybody who's, has a dog in a race, that would be like, well, okay, we're going to exclude Direwolf. Well, there is nothing else. I think probably everybody would agree that if we're doing any kind of software-based solution, Direwolf is in there and needs to be considered.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and so I'd have no problem having John on the committee, but I don't know. I don't mean to prejudge it. Maybe there's some other solution that will come up. I just don't know what it is at this point. But yeah, if you're on the committee, just when it comes to voting on your thing, just abstain from that particular vote.
Absolutely. And you probably already know from talking to me, I'm a hardware guy. I'm going to suggest a hardware solution, so. Okay, right. No problem. Just was curious.
Yeah, I mean, my personal feeling on it is, right, I mean, whatever people use, it's not necessarily going to be, it's not going to be free, right? There's going to be some money involved, and I don't think, Jason, you're like out there trying to make money off of the group by any means, right? I mean, it's still early stage device. we're not looking for the equipment to be donated to the group. So I don't know. I don't think about it from the business standpoint with what we're doing, that there's that much like of a conflict of interest that it's really an issue. But if, this is just what John and I had discussed, and I think the reason why we wanted to do it as a committee is as opposed to, just trying to hash it out. But
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. I agree. The reason it's fresh in my mind is because I'm dealing with kind of a similar thing with this Tarpon packet network that I'm building here locally. I've got 30 some guys that are coming to me for all kinds of hardware, and I finally just said to them, I said, look, guys, I said, I didn't start this project so I could hawk my crap on you. And luckily a lot of them came to me and said, well, we're happy to buy what you're doing because you're making the best solution for what we're doing, which, that was their opinion. So that's the reason why it's kind of fresh in my mind. That's why I was asking that. So.
no, I mean, from my standpoint, I would like to see us try something different every year. I mean, there's just in the spirit of innovation and trying new stuff, right? I mean, I don't.
Well, I agree. There's probably several very good solutions out there. And like you said, if the hardware committee was to say, hey, we not endorse, but say we recommend, these 2 or 3 options as the end user, you decide which one of these 3 that you would prefer to use. And, it's been vetted through the group, whatever those solutions might be. So I like that. I think that's fair, because no one wants to be told, hey, you gotta buy this and use this or else you're out. Yeah, Bob did kind of have that attitude early on.
Yeah, we're
that
not
was a call. He could do what he wanted, but I like the idea that the group is open to having other solutions. Especially now since you can't go buy a D710 very easily. I just had a friend buy one for me this weekend at Hamcation. He picked it up for me. He found one virtually brand new. But that doesn't happen very often today. That's for sure.
How much was it?
$500 for a non-G710 that was literally brand new. He sent me all these detailed pictures. It was mounted in a guy's RV, and he never used it.
Wow.
And he even had the what was the blue light GPS?
Green light labs.
Yeah, he even had that with it. He had all that stuff included, everything with it, and $500 cash. I PayPal'd the guy the money, and my buddy picked up all the stuff, and he's bringing it to me Saturday. So
that's awesome. Good. Congrats.
Yeah, I'm really excited because now I actually have a backup D710 if my other one was ever die on me. So anyway, all right, guys. Well, I'll shut up.
Yeah, if I just could add, there's actually, if you think about it, there's kind of a 2-step process. Number one, for instance, there's probably a minimum power requirement of a device. We know that you can't, take a 1-watt HT to most of these mountains and make the circuit. So the first step is those kind of technical requirements. We know, for example, you have to support the hop counts, which not all devices can do. So step one is we're going to say, okay, whatever, arbitrarily, you must have at least 10 watts, or you must support the hop counts, or the technical requirements of how you beacon or how you do that, which not all radios can do. And then once you get those first set of requirements, it is sort of part 2. Okay, what equipment can meet those requirements? So if we say a minimum of 10 watts, that would eliminate all RF decks that couldn't do 10 watts, right? So yeah, I see there's 2 parts. So yeah, anybody that wants to participate, yeah, please drop me an email and we'll get a committee going.
Jeff,
Okay.
could I ask Jason for a quick update
You guys talk whatever. Yeah.
on the appliance that he talked about a little later?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry, I missed that. What was the question?
Just a quick update on your status as to you presented some technology, I guess, from your company, and I wanted to know what the present status was.
So I've got actually 2 things that I want to present to the committee eventually. I happen to have one in front of me here. This is a Raspberry Pi based solution. It's a Raspberry Pi 4. I'm going to try to show this the best I can here. Anyway, starting at the bottom is a Raspberry Pi 4. The next board up is actually a switching power supply that I designed to power the Raspberry Pi 4. It's a up to 30 volts DC in to a power pole. Again, I'm trying to show the best I can here. Gives you 5 volts out at 3 amps. So there's plenty of current here to run the Pi. The next board up is actually our Raspberry Pi GPS board that we've designed to stack right on top. And then the last item on top is the Nino TNC, the surface mount version of the Nino TNC that we designed for Nino Perillo. And this is really kind of came out of the Tarpon project, but because this TNC by itself, this hardware is capable of 1200 baud, 2400 baud, 4800 baud, and 9600 baud, all by just setting these dip switches. That's all it takes. And that TNC right there will handle all 4 of those baud rates. And what's cool about that is let's say we want to start creeping up from 1200 baud. We don't have to jump 96. We could go to 2400. We go 4800 and see what our links sustain, until we get up to 9600. So anyways, that's one solution. The other one that I don't have in front of me right now is an all ESP32 based solution. With the Pi, I think we can all agree that we're kind of limited to who can write software running under Linux to do these functions. Xaster or whatever software. The ESP32 solution, I have direct control over that because myself and my partner, my friend up in Canada who's writing all the firmware for that, all I have to do is go to him and say, hey, the ATGP guys want to be able to handle, 7 hops or 12 hops or whatever. We need this feature. We need this feature. And he'll do it. He can do it. I mean, the guy's unbelievable. My friend Remy is unbelievable when it comes to writing firmware for actually multiple products that he and I worked on. So that's an extremely adaptable hardware, and that has a GPS built into it, for example. And again, all my solutions are tie this to whatever radio of your choice. So if you've got a 10-watt radio, if you've got a 50-watt mobile, you can tie it to whatever radio you want. So whatever John and company decide on what's our minimum power level, you just find the radio that meets that requirement, that minimal requirement, and you just interface it to either one of these. So that's what I'm planning on presenting to the group as far as hardware solutions are concerned. The Raspberry Pi, again, that relies more on the software that's going to be written to run on Linux, but the ESP32 device will be extremely customizable to whatever we need it. We could write a whole separate firmware that just simply does those functions, because that firmware we have right now does a lot of things, and I'm talking a lot of things. We can strip all that out and make it do just those basic functions that we need for that particular project. So hopefully that answers the question and doesn't get too wordy.
It does. Thank you. I was just looking for the update. Thank you much.
And this is Ron. In case anybody didn't catch it, Lynn was he's on YouTube talking about the D75 Digipete, and that's a fill-in or a temp digipeater. It's the YouTube channel by Don Arnold. It was a pretty good review. I guess, was that down in the Hamcation, Lynn?
Yeah, that was actually on the parking lot at the Hamcation in Orlando. Don loaned me a D75 overnight so I could play with the Bluetooth interface and make sure APRSI 32 worked with it. And it works just like a D74 from that standpoint. And then in exchange for that, he wanted me to record a clip on digipeating because, by his admission, he doesn't really understand it, and really wanted to know, what's the big thing about the D75 having digipeating in it? And the bottom line on that is practically nothing.
Well,
because it's only an HT.
Yeah, well, the one thing I want to say is, if you pay attention to what Don, he only really cares about the D-Star aspect of that radio. And as long as I've known Don, as good as Don is, he really has no understanding of how APRS really works. So it's really a shame that radio, being that it's capable of that, Don doesn't really know. So he's not doing it any favors. He's worried about the D-Star aspect of it. And we need people like you, Lynn, or somebody who's knowledgeable to point out those those features of that radio. So I'm glad I'm glad he gave you one. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really funny. He was so proud of the fact that his D-Star tracking beacon that the D75 actually does do properly, whereas the D74 did not. But his DGPS or DPRS beacon, he was so proud of the fact that that caught such a great path as he drove down to Orlando. And I'm like, yeah, but Don, wasn't that actually talking to your own little hotspot sitting in your own car
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
with mobile internet?
Yeah, because I'm friends with him on Facebook, and I watched him post and all that, and I wanted to comment that and go, Don, I'm sorry, but you're going like 3 feet to a hotspot running it, to the internet. That you're not proving anything. But I didn't. I
Well,
kept my mouth shut.
yeah, to prove that point to him, when I took the radio back to him, I fired up a mobile iGate on my D74 and had his D75 beaconing analog APRS. And lo and behold, I had a perfect track captured on APRS-IS from Palm Bay to Orlando, Florida. Duh, I brought my own iGate.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I saw a lot of stuff he was posting, and it was driving me crazy. And I even commented on a few of the posts and said, "Hey, Don, can we get some more demos of the APRS side of things?" And he didn't really respond to that. And like you said, it's his own admission, he doesn't truly understand how it works. So I think he's a little scared to do that because he doesn't want to post something that's inaccurate.
Well,
I
yeah,
get
there's
it.
that. And the fact that the D75 is literally the same APRS functions as the D74,
Right.
except for the addition of the digipeating out of
Yep.
the D72.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there's nothing new and flashy. Whereas this new terminal mode for D-Star, that is cool stuff. I got to grant him that.
Yeah.
But is it enough for me to go pop for a $900 radio?
No.
Not when I already own a D74.
That's exactly how I feel about it. I have a D72 and I don't really want to go spend, $800 on that. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I have a D72 as well, and I will give the plug that the D74's Bluetooth interface to the TNC is gorgeous. I mean, it can't be
Yeah,
beat.
unless you're running an iOS device.
Yeah, unless you're running that. But there is a guy that has a little hardware solution that converts the SPP for the D75 into the BLE for the iPhone.
Yeah, but you see my point. They really shot themselves in the foot by not building in BLE support in the device itself. I can't believe
Yeah.
that oversight. That was a huge oversight on their part.
Well, I think it was a shortcut, not an oversight. I mean, they
Oh,
did not
really?
have to do any extra firmware to release
Oh,
the D75 APRS Bluetooth.
yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. I should say that the ESP32 thing I was talking about, not only can it can also be an iGate as well, since it's got the ESP32 that can support both classic Bluetooth as well as Bluetooth low energy. And we've tested that on both. It works great. So we have that addition to that device as well. And I should also mention that if you're running APRS Droid or APRS IS, or not APRS, the iOS APRS FI, both of those applications will work over Bluetooth to the ESP32 device I was talking about earlier, which does give you an actual visual display, something that you can monitor and look at and interact with when the device is running and during the event. That was my biggest complaint about the appliance, was there was no visual. Well, you had to jump through some hoops to do it, but this will be a very easy. You just pair with Bluetooth and boom, there you go. You got yourself an interface to interact with during the event.
I hope this year Kenwood surprises us with announcing a new mobile, and that we don't have to wait, another 9 to 12 months for it to ship.
Yeah, and then how expensive it will be.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
yeah.
A D750 would be really nice. Yes.
Yeah, and then to the point about price, right? I mean, what is a 750 for the HT? So just trying to
Yeah,
think. I
you're
mean,
talking
I guess
over
I'm
a
trying to
thousand
remember how much of a
dollars.
difference there was between the D74 and the D710. Not much, actually.
Yeah, but I think a mobile you'd be looking at well over $1,000 for that.
Yeah, at least 1,000.
Yeah, 1,200 probably realistically. When everyone thought the D75 was going to be like 600, ended up being
Yeah, it's
150.
no way.
I think the mobile would be $1,200 easy. Yeah, that's just my speculation on that.
But I think in that they will price themselves out of the ballpark if they do that. And if
That's
it's
what-
even
And what more
1,000.
will the replacement of the D710 be able to do? What can they add to it?
They'll add D-Star, they'll add Bluetooth interface to the TNC.
Oh,
They'll
that's
hopefully
right.
add this D-Star terminal mode. There's a ton of stuff out of the D74,
Okay.
75 that they can put into the 710.
Okay, all right. So would it just be like a newer version of it? You'd have actual additional capabilities.
And that's what we're all hoping anyway.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the one feature I'd love to see, which would be a killer, is if you could use a real keyboard with it. Because trying to type messages on your microphone is just, the old cell phone interface where you hit the key 3 times to get the C. That's just, if I could take a Bluetooth Bluetooth keyboard and run it with the radio and be able to just type my messages, that would be a killer feature.
Or bring in a nice touch screen like Yaesu brought to the table.
Yeah, unfortunately, if those of you who remember the D700, the keyboard or the way text was done was through DTMF through the mic. So when John Hansen discovered that, he came out with that PS2 interface, which I still have one in my collection, that allowed you to do that. It would just interface between the microphone and the head. And then when they came out with the D710, they did away with that. It's a serial interface, but John was never able to actually reverse engineer that. And I think that was Kenwood's way of kind of, killing that off. I don't think Kenwood necessarily liked people hooking external hardware to it like that. And I don't know. The Bluetooth option would be nice. That would be great. I wouldn't hold my breath on that.
But I would say that if all our, irregardless of the manufacturer, the number one beef against messaging with APRS is everybody wants to use a real keyboard, right?
That's
Nobody
absolutely
wants
I wonder, like, when these
I like the
manufacturers
idea of Bluetooth. That's why I like the idea of Bluetooth to a phone or a tablet, because then you have all the Android or iOS keyboard entry options that allow you to do that. So that's kind of catching on here. I've been putting these ZSP32 devices into some of my friends' hands, and they love the idea that they can just pair to it and then use the keyboard or even their voice to text, keyboard in their phone to do that. They are finding that very useful.
That's why I wonder, like, when manufacturers like Kenwood are developing a new product, like, how much do they actually work with hams, or do they just kind of develop it in a vacuum and then say, here's what we made?
We need a secret one in our group.
Right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think Kenwood or Yaesu does that. Yaesu might talk to the community a little bit more. I don't think Kenwood does very much at all. I think that they are very closed off.
I know it was at Zygu. I understand that when they develop radios and documentation, even that they have a small group of hams that obviously they're like all on non-disclosure agreements and whatnot, but they seed equipment out to them and get feedback, and then even when it comes time to reviewing documentation, it goes out to them for review before it gets shipped.
Does anyone have any idea how Bob got with Kenwood?
How he did? Yeah.
Yeah, how that ended up.
I don't know like the genesis of the relationship, but I know the guy who he worked with at Kenwood.
Yeah, my understanding was Bob just approached him at Dayton one year and just said, "Hey, we're doing this thing." I think he approached all the major ones, and Kenwood was the one who bit.
Yeah,
That's
Phil Parton. Yeah, Phil Parton is the guy at Kenwood that Bob worked with.
Okay, yeah. I think I met him at DCC one year because it was the year that they took on smart beaconing, because my friend Steve Bragg, who invented smart beaconing, him and Tony Arnerich Steve was there that year to have a meeting with Kenwood, and that was actually the very moment that they inked a deal to put smart beaconing in all the Kenwood devices. Was that very DCC? I was there that year. And it was interesting because I got a chance to talk to the Kenwood marketing manager at the time, and he told me that Kenwood only was allowed to create new amateur gear when the RF engineers, the design engineers, had absolutely nothing else to do in the commercial side, and then they were allowed to work on designing new amateur gear. That's why they would run a product for so long, because they may not have 3, 4, 5 years to work on new stuff because they weren't allowed to.
Wow.
And I got that directly from that marketing manager with Kenwood at that time. He told me that himself. That's the only reason why I can speak on authority of that. Now, things might be different now. I don't know. But of course, with everybody cutting budgets and everything, I wouldn't imagine it's gotten any better.
Yeah.
Plus, you travel, you follow the money. If you're a commercial product,
absolutely.
you give you the money. You don't waste your time on amateur gear. So,
Yeah.
Again,
But in terms of listening to what hams want, I mean, what would the number one thing you'd want for us with the ICOM IC705, which is a great radio? How about support 9600 baud? I mean, that's the biggest. I mean, aside from the fact that it's only 10 watts, there's your killer right there. You could use an IC705 and make a great APRS radio for 9600 baud if they just brought the interface out.
I can speak on authority of that. About 2 Daytons ago, I approached Ray Novak, who is the product manager with ICOM, and I said,
they have one that have nothing to do with APRS. Yeah,
that's exactly right. In fact, he got very angry at me.
Yeah, he's vehemently opposed to it.
And when I left the booth, I got a phone call 5 minutes later from a friend that said, were you just over at ICOM talking to Ray about APRS? I said, yeah. I approached him and said, Ray, Kenwood's not doing anything over here. If you took this on, I said, you could kill the market. You could take charge. And he lost it. He absolutely lost it on me. And I said, yeah. He goes, there were people who witnessed him screaming at you, and they knew who I was. And I said, yeah, I just approached him because I thought, hey, this is ICOM's chance to shine. He and their people, they want nothing to do with APRS. He told me it was old technology. No one cares about it anymore. I'm full of shit. I don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, I couldn't believe what he was saying to me, and he was saying it loud enough that everyone in that booth was turning and looking at him. I mean, he verbally attacked me. So at that point, I walked out of that booth thinking, 1, the hell with ICOM. I'll never own another ICOM again. And 2, I hope Yaesu and Kenwood put them out of business, because I couldn't believe the way he was talking to me. And I just approached him totally, and I'm glad to see Yaesu is still taking up, the flag. Maybe they're not doing it exactly the way we would like it, but they are at least doing it. And Kenwood is, trying to make a comeback. I'm glad to see that, and I'm glad to see some of these alternate devices coming out. Like even though the Anytone is really kind of crappy, I own one, but I bought it because it had APRS in it. And I know Lynn was trying to work with them at one time, and I don't know where that all stands. I mean, they could make that thing way better. I don't know if they're interested in doing that. It's almost like they just threw a first at it and said, that's good enough,
But the thing to remember about 9600, it's not APRS only. I mean, in other words, you have like VARA, FM, and these other modes. Yeah.
We're doing a traditional packet network here right now as I speak. We're building out using 1200 and 9600 AFSK packet. And you're right. You can do WinLink and, all these other, things that use traditional AX25 packet. Yeah, I agree that like a Kenwood D700, you can put that thing in the regular connect mode and do, connected packet with it. You can't do that with the layer devices. You can't do that with the Yaesu. That's the biggest downside with the Yaesu devices, is that you can't externally connect to the TNC.
Question about VARA, APRS or VARA. Are there like standard frequencies for using APRS, or is it kind of free reign in digital space?
I think they're using 20 meters and 30 meters, but I can't remember what the frequencies were.
Actually, it's biggest on 40 meters.
Oh, really?
They're actually dissing 30 meters. I don't understand why. And so they did 20, they did 80, but they really seem to think their hotspot is 40.
Hmm.
And they are working to standardize on a frequency on each band so that people don't have to just spin the dial and hope there's somebody at the other end of that frequency
Because I
listening
was,
to VARA HF.
yeah, I set it up. Well, I got Bar set up with my Yaesu last night, and I was wanting to try it out, and I went and did a Google search just to see where people might be, and I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, you won't find it on Google. You'll find it on Facebook.
Ah, that's why I can't find it. Okay.
The other thing to remember, guys, in terms of radios, it's been proven that the software TNC outperforms a hardware TNC. So what you really want is Direwolf is going to outperform any hardware TNC we've seen in a radio yet. So do I really want Kenwood to come out with a, $1,500 radio with a hardware TNC? No, I'd rather have a good RF deck and, take my $60 Evolve laptop and run Direwolf because it's going to outperform it. Right?
Well, maybe that might be true with whatever Kenwood selects, but I'll tell you this Tarpon, this Nino TNC, I'll put that up against a software TNC any day. This thing is incredible, and this also supports I2LP forward error correction. Well,
Direwolf does that.
Yeah, it does now. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
But I'm just
so
saying,
no, I mean that's a test that somebody should run those tests.
Well,
Like
there you
who's
go.
the
There's your
receiver?
bake-off for the event.
Well, you some of the stuff you need some good gear, but John Langer did run a lot of tests. And he's published the results, and we've got who is the guy that does for years and years and years has been doing the receiver tests on HF radios. I forget him. He takes all his test gears, runs them through, and rates the radios. Yeah, an independent test lab who would test this gear, and if there's a hardware TNC that will outperform Direwolf, yeah, we all want to know about it, right?
Okay, it's Steve WA8LMF made
Yes.
what's called the TNC test CD, and it contains over 1,000 packets. So that has become somewhat of the de facto standard for comparison.
Thank you, John, for mentioning WA8LMF because he's also got information on his website about VARA HF, but he prefers to do it on 30 meters, which is not real popular with the rest of the VARA HF.
TNC test CD. So how do you, when you want to actually do testing with this CD, how do you interface with it, John?
Well, okay, you download this big file, which I think was really an ISO file. Then you can burn it to a CD, and then you can play it real time. Or what I do is I just ripped it to an audio file, and that allows me to do playbacks, like 10 times faster than real time.
Okay. I was curious about that. Okay. So you're basically creating like a virtual audio channel and then playing it right into Direwolf?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Anybody else have anything else they wanted to cover? We're going on 9 o'clock, so I just want to be conscientious of people's time. I know a bunch of folks dropped already.
Jeff, I just would like to mention that one of the things that's really worked well for us here in the Northeast is to get together at various times, like at Deerfield and at LobsterCon, where 3 or 4 of us would get together and actually test our gear well ahead of the day of the event. And I'm sure everybody, I'm preaching to the choir here, but any of the old timers know that when somebody shows up with a brand new radio on the day of the event that they've never tested before, that is not a good recipe for success. So particularly people in southern areas, be thinking about going out and running tests. And the more you can test your gear and test it with other people, we're going to be much better off than if we wait till July 1st and say, yeah, time to dust it off and see if it works.
Absolutely. Yeah, I started trying to think about events coming up that would allow folks in the Southeast to do that, but I can't really think because I mean, you got Dayton, and then the Huntsville is the big one here in the Southeast besides Orlando, which already passed, but Huntsville isn't until after the Golden Packet. But we can probably still try and pull something together. All right, guys.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you. Have a great night. We'll be in touch.
Yep. Good night.
Thanks,
Take care.
everybody.
Take care. Take care,
Bye.
everybody. Glad I made it to the tail end.